Polipede works here, back like we never left with One Piece Chapter 1085, The Death of Nefertiti Cobra. So, no cover story this week, but we do have a fun cover art of Frankie guiding some baby turtles to the sea, which is pretty cool. But yes, we have Nefertiti Cobra right where we left them, with an audience with the Gorosei and Eam himself. What's so interesting about this is that other characters refer to Emu as Emu, so I am you. However, they refer to themselves as Mu, M-U. So I don't know what the deal is with that. However, Cobra brings up that somebody from the original 20 was also called that. So if you remember, I released a video with the 1084 video stating that Emu could have been a subject of a previous op user's internal surgery, and reading in between the lines, sussing out the context clues, this seems to be the case. Emu just basically goes on to say, the moniker D is the name of our enemy, and it's the fault of Nefertiti Lily, as well as the scholars, for finding out what the poneglyphs say, and apparently it's Lily's blunder that the poneglyphs were scattered all across the world 800 years ago. So that's very interesting. But Emu then wonders if that was truly a mistake, or was that part of a grand master plan. When this is said, the Gorosei have the Glocks out, ready to gun down Cobra. And then the one with the big mustache says, your fate was sealed as soon as you laid eyes on Emu, which, okay, that makes sense. And then we see Cobra sweating the issue and says, not surprising, they can't let anyone know that the world's greatest taboo has been broken. Then we see Sabo, and he says the atmosphere feels tense. We hear that Cobra goes on to say, the truth is, the letter from Alabaster's ruler 8 centuries ago was signed by Nefertiti D. Lily. Okay? Do you know what this means? This means that Vivi is a D. And potentially Rob Lucci, if I'm right about that. It's so interesting because I remember around 2 or 3 years ago, I was talking with a buddy of mine who is a member of my Discord, The Digital Burrow. We were having a talk about Vivi. And I didn't really think much of Vivi back then, but he really led me on to how interesting Vivi is, and how during her time with the crew, how her interactions are very unique and very leadership-esque in comparison to any other crewmate we've had since her leaving. So I think she deserves a video from me just talking about her, because I was now from that talk and years forward have said that I think she is going to join the crew. If there was ever a crew with 2 D initial members on it, I could see it being the Straw Hat crew, because it makes a little sense just based on how she's conducted herself with the crew during Drum and Little Garden. So it's also interesting too that she and Luffy did get into a fight back in Alabaster, so that's something. So as soon as he utters the name D. Lily, right, Eam shoots an arrow out of somewhere, and it goes right through Cobra. You know what this reminds me of? I don't know if anyone's familiar with the manga and anime Soul Eater, but there was an antagonist named Medusa, and she had an ability like this. So that's very interesting that we're seeing it here in One Piece. So Sabo leaps into action. He performs the iconic Fire Fist on the Gorosei and uses a new attack called Smothered Mate. And the editor's notes here. So Smothered Mate is a chess and shogi reference in which the king is checked by a knight while surrounded by its own pieces. Okay, once this is done, we see Eam's eyes shift, and apparently Eam turns into some sort of monster and gobbles up the attack, which is ridiculous. And then, oh boy, we have 5 gigantic silhouettes of monstrous figures surrounding Sabo. Okay, here's my take on this. I'm starting to think everyone present here very well could be a mythical Zoan. If not a mythical Zoan, a Zoan. There's some precedent for them to be Logia or Paramecia, because we have seen Logia, like, say, form this, like, weird deity-esque body, like at the end of Skypiea, which looks really, really similar to Gear 5th Luffy. And then we've seen, like, Caesar Clown do kind of the same thing when he ate the Land of the Dead gas. But we've also seen Paramecia have a sort of big form, like baked into their base abilities, because we have, for example, Capone Beige, in which he can turn into Big Father and become the actual castle. And that's a part of his abilities. That's not like a Gear 2 or an Awakened sort of thing. That's just a aspect of his abilities. So I could possibly see them being Logia or Paramecia, but how things have been going and how much emphasis and significance is being put on the mythical Zoan class, I'm gonna say that all these guys are mythical Zoans. Also, once again, shout out to Library of O'Hara, because the comic he commissioned the art for did show one of the Gorosei becoming a dinosaur. I believe it was Saturn. He became some sort of dinosaur. So he was partially right on that. Give credit where credit was due. It's kind of freaky how much he predicted in that one comic he commissioned. But yeah, so that actually is coming to pass. But yeah, I'm starting to think all these guys are most likely mythical Zoans. The weird guy from the top, which is not Emu. Emu probably is a mythical Zoan too. Let's be real. Because the thing with mythical Zoans is that based on Luffy and Yamato, Luffy is a creation made up by Oda. Not the character. Of course the character is. I'm talking about Nika. Nika is a complete fabrication in One Piece that was brought up like 40 some odd chapters before Gear 5th was actually shown off. We heard Who's Who talking about it. So I said to say Zoans of the mythical variety can actually really be anything, and it could be a mythological figure that was brought up once. I know a lot of people will bring up the various deities that were mentioned during the Skypiea arc in Nolan's flashback when the young girl was about to be sacrificed. So some of these guys could be some of those deities that were mentioned. Who's to say? But also what's very interesting too, it could be that these guys are based off of very, I guess, local or very little known legends, like how Yamato is, because Yamato's fruit is based off some mythical wolf that has no real readily available information on it. It's like bits and pieces. So yeah, I mean, it's up in the air. And then two, we haven't really gotten a lot of mythical Zoans based off of yokai. So that's a thing too. So I just say that to say you never really know. But I think this is the Gandhi guy. It's the silhouette behind the one with the horns on the, I believe, the left side. He looks like he has a Shroud of Mastery. And you see him again in the panel where Sabo and Cobra are running away. That looks like a Shroud of Mastery, like the same thing that Luffy has, same thing that Kaku and Lucy have. So he probably is a awakened mythical Zoan, most likely. Or he could be an awakened normal Zoan, because they have him too. So, but yeah, you can also see that kind of like on the bird guy too, in the back. Don't know who the bird guy is. I wonder which one is Saturn, seeing as how he's present on Egghead at the moment with Kizaru. So yeah, I wonder what Saturn actually is, or which one of these guys is Saturn. I guess he'll be the first one to be unveiled, actually. And you know what's so interesting about this too? Over the years, people did surmise that the Gorosei did have abilities, because a few of them do have battle scars. So that does lend credence to the fact that these guys have seen combat before, which I was on the fence about it. But after this, I mean, come on, that has to be the case. Moving on, Cobra is on his last legs, and he basically just tells Sabo to relay the message to Vivi and Luffy to tell them that they are part of the same family. And this is where Sabo gets a very interesting flashback, back to the days when they were children. So I guess when his amnesia broke, all the memories from childhood came back as well. Okay, I'll buy it. But yeah, he says, so you both have D in your name. And then Sabo says, well, Child Sabo in the flashback says, is that just a coincidence or something? And then Luffy says, I guess. Sabo says, who cares? A name's a name. Do you want a D in your name, Sabo? You can be Sad Bo. So, Sa-D-Bo. And then Sabo says, why'd you put it there? And and they laugh about it. Here's another thing. Now, this is an old theory, too, that's drifted around the community in various locations, like on Reddit and such. There was a theory based on how many people have the D initial and how weird, like people from different races having the D initial, how weird that is, like how Saul's a giant, yeah, he has a D initial. People surmise that D doesn't necessarily mean there's a blood relation. D could just mean that you are a part of the clan, meaning that you can be crowned a D by someone who already has the moniker D, which makes a lot of sense when you think about One Piece as a whole, because One Piece, even though bloodline relations are a thing, is mostly about found family and the people that you meet on your journey, making them a part of your crew, making them your nakama, your comrades. So the whole D thing could just speak to that. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are related to this person by blood. What does happen, I think, is that those who were then given the initial D pass it down to their children. So it's like once you're honored with the moniker, you pass it throughout your bloodline as a sort of oath or a promise kept from the original member who was given the moniker D in the first place. At least that's what I think. And from this little snippet here, that seems to be what's going on. And now I think about it, Sabo doesn't have a last name, so that's interesting. He doesn't have a family name, which is very funny, seeing as how he's kind of like of nobility, kind of. He's from an affluent family, so I find it very funny he doesn't have like a last name or a family name. So that's something. And then the arrow that Eam used to do the kill shot on Cobra stabs him again, and also stabs Sabo. So from this little snippet, we see that it's most likely laced with hockey, which could make sense because based on its depiction, this seems to be some sort of tentacle appendage. Like maybe Eam is a kraken of some sort. Or maybe not like kraken the animal like Surimi back in Fishman Island. Maybe it's like a mythical depiction of a kraken. Kind of like how technically in the franchise there are two tanuki fruits. There's the tanuki fruit that's canon, which is eaten by the teapot that we see in Wano. And then there's the non-canon Tanuki fruits that is from a video game on the 3DS. And this is also the same video game that Patrick Redfield is in, the guy that has the vampire fruit. So that depiction of the Tanuki fruits is more like the mythological depiction of what a Tanuki is, because they have the power to make clones of characters by, I believe, writing their names on leaves or something like that. So maybe in this situation, Eam is kind of like that same situation. Like, Eam is not a kraken in terms of the actual animal species, but it's a fruit based on the myth of the kraken. So Eam has the mythological version of the real animal. But yeah, Sabo gets attacked, so the attack has to be laced with hockey. And one thing I forgot to mention is that Sabo's resolve is also mentioned here, because he says that his beef isn't with the kings and queens of the world, but it's with people at the very top. And that's where Cobra asks, do you know Luffy? Because you remind me of him, because he saved me once before as well. And then Sabo laughs it off and says, haha, that sounds like something he would do. Forgot to mention that, but that's very interesting that he feels the same way as Koala. So that's pretty cool. We don't know if that's how Dragon and Ivankov feel, because of what has been said recently. It seems their motivations may be a bit gray or darker than gray than Sabo and Koala. But I digress, moving on. Cobra croaks, and then one of the silhouettes, actually the silhouette with the sash of mastery, actually notices someone peeking through the wall. And that someone is King Wapol of the Black Drum Kingdom, baby. And then he saw the entire thing. He saw the whole thing go down. So Wapol starts running from his life after discovering the biggest skeleton in the world government's closet. I love this. So this is why we see that Wapol is with Morgans in the present. I wonder how he got there. But anyway, the leveling goes on as the various kings are notified that they are going to continue without Cobra and Wapol. Vivi has been captured by Cypher Poe member Jaguar and Cypher Poe member Khalifa. So it's canon for real now. Like I said, pay attention to movies, because Khalifa's membership was confirmed in a movie. I don't know, bruh. And we see the rest of them in the back. We saw them last chapter as well. But yeah, and we have a little flashback from Jaguar saying that Sai and Leo proclaimed themselves as members of the Straw Hat Fleet when they attacked Charlos. And after that tussle, apparently Fujitora and Green Bull got into it, because Fujitora let the Revolutionary Army free all the slaves from the Celestial Dragons. So that's interesting. So I guess Fujitora kind of is like the step in for Kuzan, because Kuzan had this type of morality as well. Very interesting, very interesting. Kuzan and Fujitora continue to be the most complex admirals that we've had. Green Bull he's a piece of work, I'll tell you that. He's very interesting, because he just seems to be down for whatever Aki Inu says. At least that's what I'm thinking he's about. But anyway, Jabbar is sitting pretty. And then Wappo bursts through the wall like the Kool-Aid Man. Very funny. And he says, I didn't see anything, spare me. Then Vivi, seeing an opportunity, hops into Wappo's mouth, and they run out of Mary Jones, presumably. What's very funny about this, too, is that Wappo's wife sees him running off with a young girl, and she says, don't tell me you're running away with a mistress. Very funny. Very good. Okay, so no break next week, but I find it very interesting that we have Vivi with a new moniker, which gives her a totally new narrative lease in the story. I'm really wondering what's going to happen with her. I still think she's going to join, because her being a D speaks volumes. It's so interesting. But we'll do more videos on her in the future. And with that, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If you like stuff like this, please feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Polipede Works. And if you like what you see, I would appreciate your subscription. Thank you so much. See you next time.